Thank you. Thank you. That was a piece written by Sergei Rachmaninoff. He's one of my favorite composers. He's a composer I love so much, I've had his name tattooed in my arm in Russian. The funny thing is I don't actually speak Russian, so it could actually say Elton John for all I know. But, and he wrote that piece when he was a teenager. What have you guys done recently, huh? Seriously, when I was a teenager, I was shoplifting and getting high. He wrote that. I thought it was appropriate to play something by Rachmaninoff because he was once referred to as a 6-foot scowl. That's quite an impressive description, I think. But classical music is a very scowly profession. You know, normally the pianists walk on wearing a ridiculous outfit, white tie and tails, and he'll scowl at the audience, and he'll sit, and he'll play, and he'll scowl a bit more. And of course, the audience scowls too. God forbid if you clap in the wrong place, or if you don't know how to pronounce the name of the composers. It's a very scowly business. So I am going to be talking a bit about classical music. This is normally when I wait to see who leaves. Well, this is impressive. And the talk, Pianos, Sharks, and Nazis, I may have misled you slightly with that title. A little while ago, I did a TV series for Sky Arts. Because it was for Sky Arts, about 64 people saw it. But I was chatting with the boss of the station, and he said, on the EPG, the program guide that comes up on your Skybox, the programs which were the most popular and the most successful had either the word sharks or Nazis in the title. It's a true story. So I figured, you know, fucking hell, classical music needs all the help it can get. Let's shove those in the title. No. I'm thinking of using that on Match.com as well and seeing... Talks like this, I think, need to ask more questions than they try and answer. I always like to think that it's a bit like a bucket full of sand and water, and every so often we need to stir up the sand a little bit and get people talking. The overall theme for this series of talks, when I was asked to speak here, was things unseen. And again, what could be more appropriate than classical music? Supposing you could find an HMV on your local high street. Try going in and asking the kind of spotty guy behind the till, do you have a classical section? And he will look at you as if you've asked if there's a Jimmy Savile fan club or something, and just horrified. And if there is one, it'll be as if you're pushed down to the basement, like you're trying to find kind of black midget pornography kind of hidden away. And don't judge me. It was one time. And there may be 2 or 3 CDs for 15 quid each, classic FM, best TV adverts ever, which breaks my heart. The problem with classical music, I thought a lot about this, is that it has to stop apologizing for what it is. Because what happens when it goes down that road is we end up with this polarization of classical music. On the one hand, we have the sharks, which the best example of this is the classic Brit Awards, the most fetid, stinking heap of shit I've ever seen in my life. Genuinely, I would rather rim a tramp than go and watch that. Because what it is, the organizers, they think, I'm really, really sorry, guys, it's classical. So we'll get Katherine Jenkins singing Phantom of the Opera. We'll have someone on a guitar playing Waltzing Matilda. We'll have Alfie Boe singing something from Les Miserables, and we'll call it classical. And all they want to do is make money. And the other end of the extreme, you get the Nazis. The Gramophone Awards, for example, where we love Stockhausen and Hindemith and Wagner, and it's all fantastic. And if you don't like it, if you don't understand it, screw you. And we need to find a middle ground. In a way, perhaps it's endemic of our culture in general. Sad to say, but things have got faster, stupider, more immediate. Even Radio 3, even the BBC. I say that as if the BBC is amazing, in light of recent events. Radio 3 called me up about 3 weeks ago and said, would you call in the morning, something called Your Call, and what you do is you talk about your favorite piece of music, and then we discuss it, and then we play the piece. What a great idea. So I said, okay, I've got this perfect piece. It's an overture by Wagner, but instead of for orchestra, it's a transcription for piano by Glenn Gould. If you don't know Glenn Gould, for me, the greatest pianist who ever lived. Total lunatic, rock star pianist, died a few years ago. I said, it's 9 minutes, and it's really, really exciting. And the producer stopped me. She interrupted me. She said, I'm sorry, no, how long is it? I said, it's 9 minutes. And she said, no, we can't. It has to be between 3 and 4 minutes long. This is going out at 7:30 in the morning, okay? And I said, this isn't Classic FM, is it? This is Radio 3. And they said, yep, but it's too long. We can't have a 9-minute thing. And of course, music is the one thing that doesn't need to become faster or stupider or be dumbed down. We need to lose the pomp and the bullshit and the pretentiousness around it, for sure. And what we need to do is just focus on the music. You know, my concerts, I started playing, I met my adorable, chubby Canadian manager by chance in a cafe about 4 years ago. And I started giving concerts. And I wear jeans and trainers, not to make a point, just because it's what I'm comfortable in. I can't think of a single other genre of music where they say, hey, we'd love you to give a concert, but you have to wear a white tie and tails. Why? Who made up these rules? I don't have program notes, mainly because I don't particularly want an audience who want to read about sonata form in Beethoven's Vienna while I'm playing the fucking thing. I introduce the pieces and talk about the composers and what they mean to me and why I'm playing them. And people love it, some, and some people hate it. Either way, my CDs are on sale for £12.50. We live in a world of distractions, a kind of 24 style, emails, tweets, Facebook likes. We're bombarded with texts. It's kind of unconscious multitasking. You're going to judge me again, but I sit on my sofa on a Saturday night eating chicken from a bucket, watching The X Factor, tweeting about it, whilst checking my emails and playing Angry Birds, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. When did that become acceptable? I'll be chatting to a friend and I'll be tweeting while I'm talking. That's it. You might as well take your penis out and put it on the table at a dinner party. It's the same thing, to me. And the only place where we can't do this, theaters, concert halls, airplanes. Well, one time I took my penis out on an airplane. But, and that, for me, I love flying. I love it, especially since I've given up smoking. You can just relax. No one can get in touch with you. And we desperately need that peace. So the assumption that classical music, a bit like art, a bit like architecture, it's lovely, but it's for other people, that has to be smashed. You know, how often do we wander around Le Marais in Paris or Regent's Park and we see these beautiful buildings and we think, they're amazing, but they belong to other people, the people who live in them. Incidentally, Goethe, one of my favorite quotes, he said, architecture is frozen music. Isn't that amazing? And this is not about taste. You know, sometimes only pop music will do, sometimes only classical music will do. Any kind of snobbery, whether it's pop or classical snobbery, is just abhorrent as far as I'm concerned. I have a very, very clever friend of mine who was asked to give a talk at Durham University. And he said, I don't have much to say to you guys, you're all 18, 19, but the one thing I would say is whatever you're absolutely convinced of, whatever you love, whatever you're not even questioning, reverse it, just for a short period of time. If you only eat in Michelin-starred restaurants, go eat shit for a week. If you only read fiction, read biographies. If you only listen to rock music, listen to classical music. E.M. Forster, he was speaking of a Beethoven symphony, he said it was the sublimest sound ever to penetrate the ear of man. And he talked about classical music as the deepest of the arts, deep beneath the arts. Isn't that worth exploring? We live in a kind of soundbite culture. You know, we're talking about the X Factor. We see these people singing away. And when they introduce them, they have a kind of 40-second VT of their cat dying of leukemia, and they are raised by, you know, this terrible. So, what about the real deal? What about Beethoven, almost beaten to death twice by his alcoholic father before he was even a teenager? What about Schubert, 12th of 14 children, of whom only 5 survived, died of syphilis aged 31, 5 foot tall, so ugly his nickname was Mushroom Face. In the last 12 years of his life, he earned the equivalent in today's money of $1,000 a year. He lived in squats. What about Bach? By the age of 4, his closest siblings had died. At 9, his mother dies. At 10, his father dies. He had 20 children, 11 of whom died in infancy or childbirth. His wife, the love of his life, she also died. And yet, 300 years later, we're listening to the most immortal, joyful, extraordinary, eternal music that he has provided us with. Isn't that worth exploring? I'm going to end just by saying one thing. If you have ever listened to classical music and given up, or you hear it occasionally in a movie or on an advert and you like it, or you just never heard it before, take a chance and just try and have a little listen. If you only buy one CD other than mine, buy Glenn Gould playing the Goldberg Variations. Lots of G's in there, it's easy to remember. And allow yourself to explore that, to be taken on a journey, to see what all the fuss is about. And I'm going to end just with one last piece. A lot of people say, I did a thing with Stephen Fry at the Barbican, and we were talking about new names for classical music, because we both hate the word classical. And we tweeted it, and there's the obligatory shit music and up its own ass music, but serious music was the one that kept coming back. And I think it doesn't have to be that serious. And I often wonder if Beethoven was alive and if he was hanging out with Jack Whitehall, say, or Russell Howard, and getting high and drinking, and there was a piano there, and they said, go on, Ludwig, give us a tune. It may sound something like this.